Good morning. Do I feel like I have a story and a half to share? Oh, the past week or two has been very, very intense for me. Again, in the trend of dating. And so I think the last time that, no, maybe the time before that I put up a video, I had agreed to see a guy, he hadn't quite organized it, and I let the idea of natural consequences, so just stepping out of my usual way of dealing with things, which in dating may be a bit more, I'm never controlling in person, but if the logistics up front aren't sorted out, I can interfere a bit. And this time I was like, I'm not gonna do that. And I'll just let it play out. And we didn't end up meeting. And instead I said that I followed what my heart's desire was. I really wanted to go into London that day. And it worked out really well for me. I felt really strong after setting up a boundary and honoring it, not getting guilty or caught up in, I have to say this, I have to do this. And it felt like I was immediately rewarded because I had such a fun time when I was in Selfridges. And the week or two afterwards, I feel like I was being tested on it in hindsight. So I was able to hold that pose to begin with, where I, said that I set a boundary for myself, I let it play out, and I didn't control anything. And one second, I just need to. Okay, I think we're good. I lost my train of thought. I thought we were getting an Ocado delivery, but I don't think we are. I think we're good. Anyway, so yeah, the week after that, we continued chatting, and I'm naturally, since I've been 17, I have not been very good at texting. I'm quite erratic. Sometimes I can do it, sometimes I can't. It's caused me a fair few issues in friendships, and the people who I get on well with were able to work through it. Either that's their natural way as well, where they don't really care, or I've been able to kind of heavily communicate with them, and we've had many conversations about it, and we've just managed to work through it, because I also can attract people on the opposite end of the spectrum that want a lot of communication. So it just takes a lot of reinforcement, kind of saying it's not about you, it's just whatever texting means to me. I can't sustain it. I can do it sometimes, I can't. And I started to slip back into my previous habits. So usually if I date someone, because I've been doing more online dating, I'm able to put a bit more effort in. It's kind of like maybe a little bit, it's a bit more subconscious. The effort's just there, and like the interest is there. It's a new person, and I'm trying to see if it's worth meeting this person or FaceTiming with them, which is what I usually do before meeting. And after we had this thing where he hadn't quite organized it, and maybe it was just the timing anyway, my replies started to get a bit less. And we were chatting a bit, and we're like, I think we were a bit out of the groove anyway. And one morning I went to go reply to his message because I'd seen it. I think I hadn't replied for a couple days, which I know by dating standards is not good, but it's, for me, a couple days. I knew that I hadn't replied straight away, but I didn't know it had been a couple days. I just, as I say, I don't really register that kind of stuff. And I went to go reply to his message, which was a message basically saying, oh, I'm not really sure where to go from here, which is what we had been talking about a little bit before. And then I saw he had deleted it. And so again, in the vein of just kind of letting things be easy and roll out, I sent him a message back saying, I came to reply to your message. I see that you've deleted it. I'm just going to take it that you're not interested, and I wish you all the best. I didn't think much of it. I know that my communication style, lack of maybe, in texting isn't for everyone. And so to me, it was no big deal. It was kind of like, okay, this is just someone else who doesn't have this kind of style and isn't interested, just doesn't fit with me. And so at that point I was like, okay, for me, I could just leave it, but I'll close it off instead of leaving it open-ended, and kind of just go, I acknowledge that maybe this isn't for you. All the best. So I kind of thought he wouldn't really reply to the next message, or if so, just kind of be like, oh yeah, it's not really for me. And we ended up getting in a bit of an argument because he was like, no, I haven't said that I'm not interested. And now it feels like you're just, well, he said, and now you're blaming it on me. When I thought that I was kind of just acknowledging how he felt, but he felt that I was blaming him by going, I can see you're not interested. And so we started to butt heads a bit. And at this point, I started to panic because naturally I am very, very conflict averse. And I have never been in touch with my anger apart from the past year, where I'm slowly learning to let it come out and deal with it. And so I was a bit like, what the hell's going on here? I've also never had, and maybe it's a subconscious thing, not texting as much, but it's unusual for me to have a guy still reply after being a little bit hit and miss, and also to be quite direct and like, no, this is how you made me feel. I 100% appreciated it. I absolutely loved that. And to have someone kind of go, you're dropping the ball here, I really value, because all of a sudden, like, I can text again because I feel like now there's a bit more of a connection. I feel like texting, maybe for me, it ends up in niceties and small talk, and it drains me a lot. And so I think then having a bit more of a, okay, I'm seeing the person now, which was a good learning on my part. Unfortunate circumstance, but a good learning. So I started to see like, oh, hang on, this person is still interested. Okay, let's see if we can work through it. And so we have a bit of a back and forth, and he goes off on one because he thinks I'm playing him. And I think he's mentioned before, like, he's just had certain, well, he hasn't like mentioned it before, but implicitly what I've got from is like, he's had a little bit of a tough time with online dating after he sent that message. And yeah, the guilt started to come up. So before I was able to hold that place of just letting things play out, I was very in touch with what I wanted, and if it didn't match his, then it's like, okay, no big deal. But there's something around the texting that I don't understand why I can't reply, and I think it touched that nerve. So I started getting annoyed at myself, feeling really guilty, and I didn't want him to feel a certain way. It wasn't as if I was trying to palm him off. I definitely wasn't trying to play games. I completely acknowledge I might be a little bit hopeless in some areas, like the consistent texting. I know that a lot of people expect that these days, and I don't know how I feel about that either. It might just not be me. I have tried to fix it over the past, since I was 17, what year are we? 7 years, to no avail yet. But I did still feel guilty that I know that it can cause maybe, just like it causes discomfort in other people. And I do feel guilty for that. I just don't know what to do about it, because it's not in me somehow to be able to do what everyone else is able to do. So then I started feeling really guilty, and I came back and I think he thought I was playing him. So when I sent a voice note instead of texting, because I thought that might be much better, I think he realized that, oh, actually, okay, this person is just genuine, just maybe a little bit hopeless in the areas that other people are fine. And he was like, okay, I am willing to do it your way. And I was just explaining that, what I'm explaining to you guys, that texting is really hard for me, and I do dating a little bit differently. I like to go slower anyway. And so in the end, we managed to patch it up, but it had uncovered this piece of guilt. And now I had this sense of, I was in a bit of a confused state again, which I hadn't been since I started dating again recently. And the whole idea was to not get in this confused state. But now I had this I had this aim of trying to let things roll, but now I had this grip of guilt and a bit of an I owe you, I can't mess up. And so now I'm in a bit of a constrained space, but at the same time, I'm trying to learn to be a bit more go with the flow and to not take their desires on as my own, because I have that issue. I always take on other people's desires and emotions and responsibilities, and I've had huge enmeshment problems growing up, and so I can never tell where I begin and end and they begin and end, and this started to blur the lines again, and so it caused a lot of internal panic in me. And anyway, so I was like, okay, well, I'll keep going. I'm gonna go with both these feelings coming up, you know, the desire and the ability sometimes to be able to let things play out and hold space for both of us separately. But also I start feeling this guilt thing come up, and I'm like, okay. So then we try and organize a time to meet and a day to meet, which is where we messed up last time. Because we'd agreed to meet at a time the first time, but he hadn't said where, and it got to 2 hours before we were meant to meet, and I was like, I haven't heard from him. I've got this other desire where I want to go into London, so I'm going to do that. And so we ended up not meeting, and then this time, and yeah, so he started to show up and sent me a message, and I was like, you haven't even told me where to meet. I'm actually not available anymore. We managed to work that out, and that was fine. Like, there was no blaming on each other's side. It was just he thought he told me and he hadn't. And at that point, I didn't know what kind of character he was. Like, we hadn't met before. So you can see at the end of it, on his side, totally understandable that he was a bit like, what just happened? I'm starting to travel to see you and now you're not available. And on my side, I was like, well, you hadn't organized anything and it's now right before we're meant to meet. What am I meant to do? And that was, by not going, by doing my own thing, really helped me heal not waiting on other people, because that was a bad pattern that I had. It was like, oh, I've made this half commitment, or someone said that they might be free, and I might be still, I felt like fully committed, even if it was oh, we could do that. And so I wanted to shake that, and that was a huge helping hand. And I had so much pride in myself, so much like, yes, girl, you did it. Self-power in that, and then chatting about it afterwards, you know, I didn't, it was because I was able to just let things flow naturally. I didn't hold any resentment towards him either, so it just worked out really nicely, and again, he didn't either. But I think by the time that it came to organizing something else, after we'd had a bit of an argument and he'd kind of thought that I was playing him, so I think it was more the texting thing that became an issue. Yeah, we tried to organize a place and we started to fall apart again. It was okay, I'm free this time. And then he said, can you come to me? And I was like, I'm not really comfortable with that. And so it took us like 2 days of trying to talk through it, and it didn't end up happening again. And again, we were kind of in this weird headlock thing where like we both had the intention of meeting each other, but things were just confusing. And during this time, I was getting more and more and more stressed out. I was getting really confused. What is me? What is them? Because I've had times before where I'll make all the effort. I'll do what they say. Again, like I can't tell what's me, what's them. And I didn't want to do that this time. And I didn't want to be stubborn, but I also just didn't want to fold and go, oh yeah, no, okay, I've got the time, I can do that. It's like, I didn't want to go in to see him because I didn't like the city that he's in, and it's the first time that I'm meeting him, and I didn't know whether I felt safe with him. And so there were just like other reasons, but we kept butting heads. And I think the whole time he thought I was playing him. So he starts getting more, no, you do this. And I'm so busy, and like this, like giving excuses. And I was then I was also getting in my own head as well, like going like, yeah, I don't want to do that. Like at a head level, we were clashing more and more. We were both getting more stubborn, getting further away from where we all like compassionately were, but we still, at the end of the day, were both genuine people. One having the intention to meet, but and he's going away on holiday as well, and yeah, so again, I started to feel that pressure, and the guilt side of me, that older guilt side of me, started building, and just at that point, I turned everything in on myself. And that's where usually I cave, and then I'm like, oh, well, I should just go because I'm being an issue, I'm being a problem, I'm making things hard. But then I feel awful afterwards on the other side once I've gone and I kind of recollect myself, because I'm like, that's not what I wanted at all. You know, if I go when I'm in that state, I close off to then try and please the other person. So I'm not really in touch with, oh, is this a good match for me? And I'm getting stressed even thinking about it. So yeah, it put me in such an internal warfare state, and there's something it wasn't just oh, this is crazy, chaotic. It meant something really, really deep to me, and something that I'd never been able to release before. So anyway, I had a conversation with, so I've been getting therapy. I had a conversation with my therapist, and she was basically a bit on his side, like, you're being unreasonable, he's being fine, just go. But as I said, it wasn't actually about the date itself. There was something that I was making it mean that was just, it was like, I didn't need to be told that he was communicating directly and fairly, and like, I can see that. But what I can't do is shake this guilt feeling that always comes up. And as I say, it doesn't matter whether I go on the date or not, like, that feeling is just there, and it never shakes. Like, I've tried it, and so that didn't really help, and that made me feel even more confused and stressed, because I still had this feeling of, part of me doesn't want to go, I'm so uncomfortable, and yet I've got this guilt side, and my therapist is building into that guilt side, and I have this feeling from my past learning over the past year that feeding into that guilt is not a great idea, and acting on that guilt is not a great idea. And so I was like, well, now I'm a bit lost for support. And then my brother came home, and my brother and I are extremely close, and I adore that boy so much. And we chatted things through, and he's not clued into the like healing and therapy side. He is dating a bit at the moment. And I was chatting about everything and kind of saying the different positions and reading him some of the messages, talking about what my therapist said. And he said, like, at the end of the conversation, we went through a lot, and he was like, in the end, I think you just need to go for you. You've had a heck of a year, and I think you just need to get out and go. And something in me still after that was still like, something's not being touched on. And I had a family meal out the next day. We went to a really lovely restaurant, one of my favorites, and I chilled out a bit, and I was just reminded of things that were really important. And after that, I texted this guy and was like, okay, I'll come to you. I really didn't feel good about doing it, but I didn't see any other way, because, well, actually, so after the conversation with my brother, I was like, I'm still getting the feeling I don't want to go. So I was like, okay, Talia, you keep getting this feeling, just don't go. Message him, keep it clean. It doesn't have to be this dramatized. Why are you making it difficult? Just don't go. Plus, he's going away for a while, like, if things work out, which is what I said to him before. I was like, okay, we could just leave it for now. But then he persisted, like, no, something's up. And so, but then I couldn't do it. I couldn't actually close it off. I was like, I could message him and say, no, I'm not going, and like, this isn't working, but it still felt open-ended in me. It still felt like that, whether it's to do with him or not, there was an energetic learning, an energetic learning that I still needed to learn. So I was like, oh, okay, we're doing this then. And I messaged him, and I was like, okay, I'll come to you. And I was like, okay, Talia, we've made this decision. Don't put it on him. This is about you and your learning, which is why I was able to go, because the conversation then shifted from I'm not going for this guy, it's then, okay, it's now for me. So that guilt side kind of shifted a bit and I was able to be a bit lighter. But then 10 minutes later, that anger feeling of like, I really don't want to go started coming up again. And I was like, I am not bailing. I've said I'm going to go. He and I have done this dance twice before. I know that you don't want to do it. I know it's the opposite of what you were proud of what you did a few weeks ago. And I was like, I'm going anyway. I've said I'm going. I am going. I don't want this whole dance. I don't want to mess someone about, especially now that we know a bit more about each other. And I know that he thinks that I'm messing him about. And yeah, I was like, I'm going. So I end up driving there, and it's a 2-hour drive. It's meant to be 1 hour, but the traffic is crazy. I even left 15 minutes earlier, and it's like a Monday afternoon, so I wasn't really expecting people to be out and about so much. And yeah, so I'm sitting in the car, and that side of me that is angry is building more and more. I'm just going, why the am I here? Like, I am not happy right now that I am the one as driving. It's against what I want to do, and that's what I'm annoyed about. I'm annoyed about the fact that I'm going against myself. And I'm sat in that car and I'm just like, ugh. And so the thing I have as well is that I know that when I get on the date, I'm going to be fine. Like, first dates are always great. There's so much to talk about. And I have a bit of a switch. I can go into, okay, this person's in front of me and it's about them. It's about our connection. And that's kind of what I was worried about, and why I wanted to sort all these like really heavy gripping emotions beforehand, because I know once I get there, I'm going to be fine. And that's what my therapist was saying in terms of like, oh, you should just go because it's going to be hard. And I was like, no, I know that when I'm on the date, it's going to be easy because I shut off parts of myself that are problematic, and I know how to go with the flow. Like, I've worked before. I know how to shut down my own emotions for the best interaction, and it's automatic now. So that's why I wanted to do it all up front, but I couldn't, although I guess actually probably some was processing as I did the back and forth. That was probably in hindsight a good healing thing. I just worked with each emotion. Yeah, so anyway, I get there and I'm on the date, and I'm back in that mode of I know how to make this work. I know how to be friendly. I know how to not like put my emotions onto him. And I kind of have a bit of a strange thing as I'm sitting across him. I kind of go, I've done so much. So I've been healing for a while, but I've been doing some like deep, like generational ingrained DNA healing the past year. It's been incredibly deep. And as I've started to really get back in my own power and sort out my enmeshment issues and let my emotions free, I'm sitting across from this guy, and I'm suddenly like, I'm faced with a new problem. I've cleared a lot of my emotional wounds, and I've still got a few, but I can feel how far I've come for sure. And I'm like, if I'm not, so usually what people do, most people, because they're not really thinking about it and somehow they're able to just show up and dating's easy for them. I envy you. A lot of people aren't very conscious and they kind of just show up, see what's fun. And what's happening there is they're making a decision based on the emotional wounds that they have, the attraction they have, and they're kind of looking for, is this person going to be what I'm used to? So all the highs, all the lows. I'm trying not to do that. I am dating based on values and purpose. And as I've cleared out a lot more of my emotions past year, I'm like, I don't know how to pick someone, because before you go for someone who's more emotionally familiar, and now that I'm in a much healthier place and I'm doing it just on values, I'm like, I don't know how to pick out values, and all of a sudden everything else starts feeling really scary and my time pressure worries start coming up. But it was just really interesting to sit across from someone and go, I'm not looking at you as an emotional body. I'm looking at you as what can we build together. And I guess I worry a little bit more because I'm like, most people, like pretty much everyone I've dated is just such a super kind and genuine person. I'm like, if everyone I meet is super kind and genuine, how the hell am I supposed to pick a person? But I think what's coming up for me now is like, I need to get a bit more in touch with my desires and what I want. As I said before, I've kind of been so on the heels of everyone else. I've felt so like, okay, I have to shut myself down and listen to what other people do what other people do, and just shut up and make their life happy. And I'm shaking all that, and it's just really interesting now to date with more of a neutral body. So yeah, that was a good learning. But yeah, I then started driving home, and the fallout after this was I came back after the date, and I was in more of a, okay, you've done it, you've learned some stuff, you've shaken off a lot of fears, you found something interesting about the future of your dating, you found some stuff that you need to work on. And I was like, I'm in an okay place. I know that part of me that was angry and didn't want to go is still there. That part's not resolved. It was kind of too deep to just go. It's been coming up for the past 2 weeks. And about, I don't know, like an hour or two later, he messages me and he's like, hope you got home safe. And then we're chatting a bit. And then he says something like, so he's going away. Yeah, so he basically just said something that to me insinuated that I wasn't making an effort. And I was like, that part of me was like, are you freaking kidding? Like, I just went against my will and I drove 2 hours to you, and I told you that there was traffic, and I said that I was stressed. And yeah, it was like, okay, now you just got to put more effort in to make this work. It was basically like that. That's how it read in my body. I mean, he said we, but it kind of felt quite pointed, as if like, I'm ready to make the effort. Are you ready to make the effort? That's how it registered in my body. As I said, like, I'm not interested in how he actually meant it. I'm interested in the trigger that it's bringing up for me. And it put me right back in that anger place. And I was like, oh my God, I just got in like a level neutral place, and then now I'm back. But yeah, so I had to let that ride out. And oh yeah, I like, a part of all this, like, I had a huge emotional release as well. Like, I was just bawling my eyes out for half a day. It was like the day after my therapy, before I spoke to my brother, when all the pressure just came up. Like, I just had so much internal conflict. So I knew this was really deep, and it still like wasn't shaking out. And where I'm at the moment, so we're kind of just, I've gone back to, we had a really nice time, and I thought, oh, maybe I would have shaken some of the old habits, like maybe I'll be able to text more, and I'm not able to. And I'm kind of in a bit of a, half of me is deflated because I did end up going against that boundary that I was so proud that I set initially. I do 100% believe that is the learning that I needed. And probably so I learned a lot about talking to different other people, which usually I never do. I have always never relied on other people or friends or support. I've never talked about my life or my internal being. I've just always been there to listen for other people. So I learned a lot about not only being able to talk through things that are active for me, but doing it with different people and noticing what comes up for me. And I'm proud that even after chatting to different people, I still asked myself, what do I want to do? So even after I chatted to my brother, who's like the one person who can change anything that I'm thinking, like I'll do anything for. And even after that, I was like, okay, well, what is my body telling me? And it was hard to get in touch with that before, but after chatting with my brother, I was a little bit more in touch. Just about enough. And my body said, it doesn't matter if you go or not. So I was like, well, that's really interesting. Because I'm sat here thinking it's all about the date, but actually it was more about, yeah, whatever dynamic was coming up. And you don't have to know what's coming up for you in order to heal it. You just kind of feel through it and try and connect to that deeper part of you that is guiding you. So yeah, when my body said it doesn't matter if you go or not, at that point I was like, okay, well, I'll make the decision to go and I'll do it for me, because I'm going to get more information by going than by not going. And by now, like maybe the next time, I don't feel any huge shift. I know that something has moved, and this has been a huge learning curve for me. Incredibly emotional, incredibly releasing. And as I said, forged some good connections, some good skills in the meantime. So yeah, I think it was more of I had to learn the hard way. Maybe it shook that guilt side of me. Maybe in future I'll own something a bit more, or maybe this is just step one in a bigger puzzle and I'll have to do this a couple times or some variation. I'm not really sure. I was hoping that I'd feel a bit more like that anger side would have subsided. I would have known what actually happened there. But yeah, nothing's really clear at the moment. So I'm just having to take the hit and continue as I continue and just see how it pans out next time. As I say, I'm not as, I thought I'd be more engaged, and I'm just exactly the same. And yeah, so we'll see. But I thought I'd share at least some of the learnings and the turmoil I've gone through, in case there are other people out there who are finding dating quite tricky. I definitely am. Finding that difference between my desires and theirs, letting it play out, understanding where I begin, like where's my obligation, and trying to really understand, trying not to take on the emotions and responsibilities of a person who I've never met before. And also, I'm learning that it's okay to, I make one amazing step forward and I feel so great and radiant, and then it's okay to go back on that in order to let the shadow side release. So for me, that was feeling a huge amount of guilt, and like I need to help them not feel played and heal their whole dating journey. So I hope you found some learnings in this. I'll be honest, sometimes I come on and I'm like, I know what I want to share, I know the point what I want to make, and this time I just had the desire to share, but I don't have any, I mean, apart from the few that I mentioned, there's not like one clear, like, yes, this is my learning, because I think I'm still going through it. Maybe that's the learning. But yeah, if you have any support, any questions, any stories that you want to share, I am all ears. I would love to hear them. Oh, I'd especially love to hear if you've had any like little dating hacks and tips that you found in terms of just letting go, and like boundaries you've set that have allowed you to receive more and just be happier. And even if they've kicked off, you've kind of just been able to go, no, this is me. I understand that you are acting that way, but I'm staying strong. Like that would really help me, just reading other people's stories as well. So yeah, if you have anything to share, I am all eyes, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one, whatever we may be chatting about. So thank you, my loves. I will see you next time.